You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking at some players who may be available on the waiver wire, short-term, long-term, flyer type options as well. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Let's start by looking at some guys who I think have really long-term value and should be rostered in majority of these leagues. There is some discrepancy with the headlines I use here. And the first guy I want to talk about is Chris Dunn, who has found himself a home as the starting small forward for the Chicago Bulls, as weird as it sounds, considering he was their starting point guard last season. But Dunn is providing some really, really strong value at the moment. I am highly skeptical about Otto Porter's return at this point. The Bulls' medical staff is notoriously poor at diagnosis and recovery, and I just think we're going to see Porter out for quite a bit of time. Chandler Hutchison's terrible. Denzel the Hammer Valentine's losing minutes. Ryan Archer-Jacquino's not good. So Dunn has a pretty firm stranglehold on that job. I think he gets you 2 steals a game. He can get you 4 assists a game, which is valuable just in those 2 things. And if anything at all happens positive with the offense, then Dunn's going to have value. He is a 56th ranked player over the last week, available in a lot of formats, and should be a guy that you're considering as an option to add in majority of leagues at this point. You know that I'm going to say this guy is an ad, and that is Fanapants Kevin Huerter of the Atlanta Hawks. Huerter, over the last 3 games, is playing 33 minutes a night. He's hitting 2 threes, over 4 assists, 1.7 steals, and doing it while shooting just 35%. So significant room for improvement. His minutes are going to be up all season. There's always an injury risk with him. The shooting has been a question mark. But if that even gets back to average, then his assists, steals, points, and even rebounding pretty well, all that sort of combination does make him a really a must-roster 12-team league guy, in my opinion. Delon Wright of the Dallas Mavericks. He's more of a 14-team league ad, but the 23rd ranked player over the last week because he's averaging 3.3 steals and 3.3 assists. And it's not as if he's playing 30 minutes a night with Luka Doncic out. He's averaging actually under 20 minutes a game over those last 3 games. He's not scoring all that well. He is shooting well. But much like Chris Dunn, like if you miss out on Dunn, a guy like Wright who can generally provide some okay assists and steals, he has value. Now, the Mavericks haven't used him as we thought they would. His fit with Doncic hasn't been fantastic, and it looks like he's going to settle into like a 21 to 24 minute a night role. But for 14-team leagues, his ability to generate steals and assists in those minutes does make him valuable enough. He is around in over 50% of Yahoo leagues, and according to our metrics of the competitive leagues, there's still 35% of those leagues where he is available as well. So go and have a look if Delon Wright is around, and I think he'll be able to do some good for your team. Kent Bazemore, the next guy I want to talk about, hasn't been great. There's no doubt about that, but over the last 4 games, he is the 58th ranked player. He is available in a lot of leagues. He's 77% of active and competitive leagues he is available in. In 14-team leagues, I would add him. He's averaging 2 steals and 1.3 blocks a game, and that's where his value comes in. If he hits 3s along with that, that's great. The assists have weirdly disappeared. He's never going to be a high usage guy, and his shooting numbers are going to fluctuate quite a bit. But the defensive numbers from Bazemore, to me, does make him at least a 14-team league ad. Dylan Brooksy Brooks is playing pretty well at the moment. I think that's what I can say about Brooks. He does have his issues at times. It's all down to what his shooting percentages are going to be like and whether he can maintain a decent enough steal rate. He's the 130th ranked player over the course of the season, which puts him firmly in that 12-team discussion. But there are some leagues where he isn't rostered, 9% of competitive ones. So that's not everyone, but he's going to be around there. Now, there's going to be nights where he frustrates the shit out of you, but there's going to be nights where he absolutely blows up. And I think he's at least in conversation to be a 12-team league guy. The triangle, Eric Pascal, he is dealing with a knee injury at the moment. He's had hip problems, and I don't think he's anywhere near as good as what he was made out to be. But he is still available in over 50% of leagues, so every 14-team league needs to go and add the triangle when he eventually returns. I also think that he should be looked at in majority of 12s, not a must-roster guy. Not even a top 130 player this season. Again, despite all the, oh my God, look how great this guy is, how fantastic, the best guy ever. Like, there was a lot of verbal Dutch ruddering going on here for Pascal, and he's been okay. But so much of what we talked about with him is relying on this high usage, which was occurring when D'Angelo Russell was out, and that wasn't going to be able to stick. But now I think the pendulum swung a little bit in the other way for Pascal, and he should be rostered. My mate, the wave pool, D'Anthony Melton. If he gets 25 minutes a night, he's a 12-team league guy. Those minutes have come right down, but in really competitive leagues, he's available in 85% of them. That's way too many. This is a guy who, so far for the season, is just outside the top 150, despite playing only 16 minutes a game. Again, push that to 25 a game, and we see it come. He rebounds, he gets assists, he hits threes at a decent rate, he gets steals. He's usually a pretty good shot blocker. The percentages have been better for him over the last week or so. I think there's a ton of potential in Melton. I like him in dynasty leagues, and I think there is some 14-team league value, maybe in 12s. Another 14-team league guy to look at. These are all long-term type plays. We're going to get to the short-term ads in a minute, or the flyer, more question mark types. Dwight Powell is available in a lot of 14-team leagues. He shouldn't be. He hasn't been, again, the guy we saw at the end of last season, but his ability to usually combine high field goal percentage with rebounds and steals is valuable. Now he's shooting 28% over his last 3 games. That will likely improve. So he is a 14-team league guy, and a guy that's rolling at the moment is DJ Augustin of the Orlando Magic. You can short-term add him in 12-team leagues, no doubt. He is the 69th ranked player
Giggity.
over the last week of action, averaging 19 points on 51% shooting with over 4 assists. That is great in anybody's language. Whether he maintains that is a real question mark, but he could maybe hover around the top 150, even alongside Markelle Fultz in Orlando, and that makes him a 14-team league guy. So they're the guys who I just think are currently underrepresented in leagues. We just have a look now and go across to more of the some short-term type ads. Dante DiVincenzo of the Milwaukee Bucks, putting up some good numbers in place of Eric Bledsoe. As long as Bledsoe is out, DiVincenzo is worth looking at, 65th over the last week. This is one that's really interesting to me, and it is Shabazz Napier of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jarrett Culver has been benched. Now, I thought initially maybe it was because he was just sick, but maybe it's just because he's not good, and he isn't good at this point. He might become good, but he is not good. Jeff Teague's still coming off the bench.
My name is Jeff.
And Napier is in the starting lineup. Now, his first game as a starter wasn't that good. His second one was pretty bloody interesting. Now, a starting point guard who plays 30 minutes a night, who can score, hit threes, and gets assists, and can do it efficiently at times, is someone that you have to pay attention to. And whether it works out, I've got no idea. I don't know what they do. But 18-4-4 with 3 steals and 4 triples in the game against Portland on the weekend, that's unignorable. So if you've got that flyer spot, like adding a guy like Napier would make sense just to see what happens with that rotation. Garrett Temple, really strong performances in the absence of Karis LeVert. This is short term though, because when LeVert returns, his numbers are going to drop. When Kyrie returns, his numbers are going to drop. Now, they won't drop as far as we thought they would initially because of David Nwaba's Achilles injury, but it won't. Temple needs 34 minutes to really be in 12-team consideration. Lord Alfred Payton in this mix. He is now the Knicks starting point guard. I'm sure Knicks fans will be rapt to see Frank Ntilikina and Dennis Smith pushed right down the rotation order. Payton's numbers, it's all going to come from assists. And that's fine. Like, assists have value. I wouldn't be looking at him as any sort of top 50 talent. He can get steals, he can get assists. There's going to be percentage wonkiness at times, although he has improved that over the course of his career. He won't really hit threes. He's not going to be a high usage guy, but those assists are really hard to find. So therefore, you go out and add him in 12-team leagues. It looked like they were running a 3-man rotation of like 16 to 17 minutes apiece. That has changed. Payton starting, played 27 minutes, so you go and add him. A guy who's playing pretty well at the moment, Gaz Harris.
Nice, Gary!
The Nuggets have got a pretty strong schedule coming up. He's not the greatest option, but over the last week, he is the 77th ranked player. That's good enough to look at. He's available in quite a few leagues. Now, the reason he is ranked that high is because he's getting 2 steals a game. Now, if he can maintain 2 steals a game, then absolutely he's a 12-team must-roster guy. But for now, while he's getting a little bit more action offensively and the defensive stuff is coming for Harris, you add him and then we see where that goes. In Charlotte, we've got Marvin Williams, who is playing, I think, decently well with Paul Washington Jr. out. That is pushing his minutes up. He was out with that knee injury, but he is 82nd over the last week of action. 27 minutes a night, 11 points, a steal, a block, and 2 triples. And they are as Marvin Williams type numbers as Marvin Williams could ever Marvin Williams. So he is a guy that I think we look at, again, really that short-term guy. They ran Batum at power forward last game. They've run Cody Zeller there in the past. But Williams still gets those mid to high 20s in minutes, and that makes him an okay option. Royce ONeal of the Utah Jazz with Mike Conley out. O'Neal's spot in the starting lineup has been confirmed or maintained. He's available in 95% of competitive leagues and is the 73rd ranked player over the last week. Why is he so high? Well, steals again, 2 steals a game, but 6 rebounds, 1.7 threes. There is value enough in that. Now, it does really just come down to those defensive stats for O'Neal. Can he be efficient and hit threes as well? But in a 14-team league, hey, he's available everywhere. The minutes are pushing up for O'Neal. Their bench is pretty trash, and we're getting some solid enough Royce-type performances. And streaming in a 12-team is not a horrible option. I like Troy Brown Jr. a little bit more than guys like O'Neal and Harris and probably Temple as well. He is playing a much better game for the Wizards off the bench. Things may change when a bunch of these players return, but at the moment, Brown, I think he's doing well. He can rebound, he can get assists, he can get steals. The shooting is still a work in progress, as is the offensive aggression. But Brown has a nice 27-28 minute a night roll off the bench behind Isaac Bonga. And he's starting to develop. I think we'll see a little bit more come from Brown as the season goes on. And another short-term guy we look at is George Hill in Milwaukee. Not as valuable to me as Dante DiVincenzo, but still a player that does have some really strong numbers while Eric Bledsoe is out. He's been shooting the ball unbelievably all season, Hilly. He is, over the course of the year, still just the 132nd ranked player. But again, a few extra minutes, a bit more usage, some okay assist numbers. George can be an option in the short term. Some other guys for us to look at, again, some more short-term options for us to squiz at. Josh the Hitman Hart in New Orleans with Zion out and Lonzo in that bench role. Jordan Clarkson, who's on a bit of a roll scoring, some value there in him if you are looking for points. Pat McCaw in Toronto, he looks to be the starter with Powell and Siakam out. He is, again, more of a steals streamer type of guy. He has had some ball handling experience. He can hit the 3, but mainly for steals and mainly just the minutes. In 14-team leagues, McCaw has value. Ish Smith, another guy we look at who was perfect in one game and then missed all of his shots. He's sort of really up and down, but in 14s there's value, and even a short-term 12-team stream with the injuries in Washington, there's value. And speaking of the injuries in Washington, Jan Mahinmi is the starting center. We know Flaming Wagner's out for the next week. Davis Bertans is now banged up. Tom Bryant is out. So Mahinmi and Anzesh Pasechniks they are options. And anything outside of a 14-teamer, Mahinmi's an ad. But even in a short-termer, say you've got like an Ivica Zubats, Mahinmi could outperform him in that short-term role, maybe like a Jakob Poeltl, Cody Zeller type of guy, although I'd have Zeller over him. Mahinmi is an option for you there. And similarly, injuries in Boston have meant that Enes Kanter's minutes and production have pushed up. Vincent Poirier is out, as is the Rock DJ Robbie Williams. So Tice and Kanter are splitting those minutes. Enes can get the points, he can get the rebounds. He usually has good percentages, although that's been a bit wonky this season. Kanter has some short-term value. With Jeremy Lamb banged up in Indiana, Aaron Holiday's been starting. He has short-term stream value. Really like him if Lamb does remain out. And even so, Lamb had been losing minutes to Holiday before the injury. Alex Len in Atlanta. Now, we've got no idea how they're going to run that rotation when the Baptist John Collins returns next game, but Len has been putting up some big usage games off the bench. I wouldn't be stunned to see Collins start at center and Len come in as the backup, or equally, I could see Len out of the rotation and Bruno Fernando move into a backup role. But for the short term, you're grabbing him, seeing what happens. Again, he's playing well off the bench. There is some value in Alex Len. And then in Golden State, this is a real short termer, but Damian Lee is starting at small forward with Pascal banged up. He's playing really well in that role. He is a two-way guy, so opportunities long-term are limited. But while he's starting and playing high 20s in minutes, there is value in Damian Lee there in Golden State. Some other hot streak type players who are at least worth considering. Timothy John McConnell, more of with a situation with Lamb out. He's putting up some numbers. Derek Jones Jr., as long as Justice Winslow is out, I think he's worth a look. His defensive ability gets him onto the radar. Dorian Finney-Smith has played some pretty okay games. Again, not a high upside type of guy, but a guy playing well at the moment, as is Trevor Ariza, riding a bit of a hot streak with Bogdan Bogdanovic out. Punch Bob, Bobby Portis is putting up some numbers at the moment. I don't think it lasts, but again, he's worth mentioning as a hot streak player, as is Seth Curry, who's a points and threes streamer. And as long as Karl Anthony Towns is out, Gorgie Jeng is worth an ad in 12-team formats. The Shark, Bruce Brown, and his teammate, Markieff Morris, are putting up numbers. I don't know what's going to happen to Brown when Jackson returns, but he does have value here as an assists and steals and even blocks for a point guard guy. While as long as Blake Griffin is out, Markieff Morris has been excellent in the recent starts that he has had in place of Blake over there in Detroit. And the last list I want to go through are flyer type options. This is going to be amazing for many of you, but I actually think that the forward Kevin Knox is worth a look. Marcus Morris's minutes have started to go down. Knox has not looked good, but he's looked significantly better. And I reckon there's going to be a stretch this season where he has even 14-team value, and dare I say it, maybe 12-team value. Now, this is the most luxury of luxury stashes. But just keep the name Kevin Knox in mind. Bruno Fernando, I've referenced him already, starting for Atlanta. Whether he starts when Collins returns remains to be seen. But just a flyer type guy to look at. Cody Martin in Charlotte, really like what he's doing. Continues to improve every single game. He's already taken Dwayne Bacon's spot. You could see him eliminate Nick Batum from the rotation. My mate, the Dart, Goga Patadze.
Problem with my Gogo-mobile. Gogo-mobile? No, not the Dart. Not the Dart.
This guy is absolutely destroying the G League, and yes, it's hard to get minutes with Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner there, but if there is an injury or if there is a trade, Patadze is going to come in and he's going to be great. I am convinced this guy is going to be a really good fantasy player. He's going to be a good NBA center, a top 70 type of player at some point in the future. Again, this is just a luxury type stash, but he's really, really good. Alonzo Trier, another type of stash option. We just don't know what New York is doing. There is going to be opportunities, you think, at some point, but that is really just a luxury situation. Aliakoba looked great in the start for Ricky Rubio in Phoenix last game. Hopefully he can maintain that backup point guard role, and if Rubio, who has had multiple injuries over every season it seems like he's played, Okobo is going to have a starting option at some point. Lonnie Walker appears on this list, even though my confidence in him remains low because of his game and because of his coach. And then lastly, two players from Toronto. We talked about these. I didn't talk about the Raptors big men all that much because I talked about them exclusively during shows last week. But Chris Boucher and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. Boucher, it was disappointing that first game for the Raptors. He played exclusively as a backup center and got like 12 or 13, well, not exclusively, almost exclusively. He got like 12 minutes behind Ibaka's 36, which is not enough. We thought he'd have to play 20 minutes. We didn't think they'd go to a heavy dose of Pat McCaw playing 35 minutes at small forward and Anunoby playing at power forward. Same, that limited Hollis-Jefferson, but they can be some flyer type guys if they decide to go back to bigger type lineups. Boucher has significant struggles, of course, on court. He can put up big numbers, but it's all about staying on the court. And if they're going to go with the McCaw and Anunoby combination, that is going to really hurt him. And it's going to have an impact on Rondae as well. That'll do it for my Waiver Wire show. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Go and check out my Week 10 preview show that I did yesterday. You can find that where you find all of my shows. And then this week, we're going to have all the normal shows apart from a show previewing Christmas Day. I'm going to take Christmas Day off and spend that with my family. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.